It's a new year, the end of another Congress, and boy, did we have an eventful one. Let's dive into the drama that was the 118th Congress. Welcome back to Beyond the Bill Number. I'm Sarah, and a little under the weather today, but with me today is Stephen.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year, everyone. And it's January. We're kicking off 2025 with a look back at the 118th Congress. Stephen, this session was packed with plenty of drama, but when it comes to legislative results, well, let's just say it's like setting a big New Year's resolution and forgetting about them by January.
Well, that's right, Sarah. If the 118th Congress had a New Year's resolution, it was probably do more, argue less. But instead, they seem to have spent the year perfecting their political theatre. Think more Broadway, less productivity.
Oh, yeah. I think there was 19,316 bills introduced, and only 636 were passed. That's a success rate of just 3.3%. And a lot of this is ceremonial stuff, which is a lot like everything here. And do we think that 2025 is going to kick off to a better tone?
Well, yeah, so it's a new year. Everything's fresh, everything's starting again. And you would hope that perhaps this year there'd be less political theatre, perhaps more sensible policy making, but it certainly doesn't seem that way, does it?
It really doesn't. I think, what are we, 10 days into the year when we're recording this? And I think there's been at least 100 crazy news stories so far.
There really has. Over here in Britain, the big news story is all about Elon Musk and his attempts to interfere in our political process by supporting sort of far-right neo-Nazi criminals and saying that they should be released from prison, and that our Prime Minister and several of their ministers should be put in prison for stuff that happened about 20 years ago. So yeah, it's all fun and games.
I know we're kicking off the year strong. Trump is getting inaugurated here soon. He was certified. We didn't have another insurrection, but we are having tons of drama with him. I think the U.S. and Canada are fighting. We are renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. We're on absolute fire in California, just absolutely devastating. It's snowing in Atlanta right now and Dallas. So, I don't know. The vibes this year are not looking like they're going to be better.
No. I think we're in for a pretty wild ride in 2025. Well, I mean, let's get into our review of the 118th Congress then, as the 119th Congress, of course, is just kicking off. So between the debt ceiling debates, the ousting of Speaker Kevin McCarthy, and all the posturing to replace him with Mike Johnson, it really was a session of distractions. There was plenty of moments, but not really many accomplishments.
Moments indeed. I think the speaker drama of last year was one of the funniest ones I think I've ever seen since I've started paying attention to politics. And I mean, let's just talk numbers. This Congress passed fewer bills than the 117th or even the pandemic era 116th Congress. And of the bills they did pass, we got 95 national days and 73 national months. Stephen, was this Congress's real legacy making sure that we had enough days to celebrate lobsters?
Twice, Sarah. We celebrated lobsters twice. Because apparently once wasn't enough to honour our delicious buttery clawed friends. But hey, at least they didn't overlook July as National Blueberry Month. You can't let the blueberries feel left out, right?
You really can't. Blueberries, top tier fruit of all the fruits.
And I'm still not sure how we ended up with 73 national months. It's surely in 2 years. That's only 24 months. So where did the other months go?
Well, and then there were 30 bills about renaming post offices. I mean, sure, it's nice to honor our local heroes, but Stephen, is this really the best use of Congress's time?
Well, I mean, it depends who you ask, Sarah. If you're the mayor of small town USA, probably yes. If you're waiting on action for healthcare reform, climate change, housing policy, probably not so much.
Fair point, fair point. But let's not ignore the substantive bills that did pass. First up, we had the Relieve Act, which addressed international security funding and the fentanyl crisis. Stephen, what made this bill really stand out?
So it really tackled some urgent issues, Sarah. So it was actually called an Emergency National Security Supplemental Appropriations Agreement. So not particularly exciting, but what it actually did was provide billions to tackle a plethora of challenges around the world. So it's really hard for anyone to argue against taking action on fentanyl, global security. And this also included funding for both Israel and humanitarian assistance for Palestinians, as well as a host of other things. So it shows that when Congress focuses on what truly matters in a bipartisan way and actually seeks to compromise, then they can get things done.
From your mouth to their ears.
Wow.
I mean, another really meaningful bill was the Korean American Valor Act, which extended the benefits to Korean Vietnam War allies. And it's really great that this passed, but why did it take so long?
Yeah, I mean, that's the really big question here. The benefits were long overdue, and it's the sort of thing that's not controversial. Really, I mean, why wouldn't you do this, really? And it is a step in the right direction, treating veterans of the Vietnam War who were part of the Korean Armed Services the same as veterans who served as part of the US forces. But the delay just shows how slow Congress can be to address even obvious issues like this.
Yeah, and then we also had the Federal Disaster Tax Relief Act of 2023, which provided tax relief to disaster victims, including those affected by the East Palestine derailment. And that one was a really thoughtful move, but does it really go far enough?
I mean, not really. It's a band-aid, Sarah. So it helps victims in specific disasters by excluding compensation that they receive for those disasters from gross income for tax purposes. So it saves them a bit of money in their tax. It's important, but it doesn't really tackle the broader issues like disaster preparedness. So let's see if we can actually prevent some of the damage that's caused by these disasters. Or, of course, the infrastructure reform that's also needed.
Yeah, I think we'll be talking more about things like this with everything that's happening in California right now as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So then another bill that did aim big was the Securing Growth, Robust Leadership in American Aviation Act. And Stephen, this one focused on modernizing air traffic systems and improving aviation safety. But does this feel like Congress was really thinking ahead, or what's going on with this one?
Yeah, I mean, it does actually. It's a rare example of sort of forward-thinking legislation. So it addresses consumer protections, competitiveness, infrastructure, all crucial for keeping aviation systems running smoothly.
Well, that's pretty cool. And we also had a big crowd pleaser of the session, which was the joint resolution to officially end the COVID-19 national emergency. It was the most read federal bill on Bill Track 50 this year. So what does that tell us, Stephen?
Well, I think it shows people were ready to move on. So after years of uncertainty, this bill really symbolized a return to normalcy, though I'm not sure the word normal really applies to the political system at the moment. But perhaps people were just harking after a return to normalcy anyway. So it's no surprise that it resonated with so many, even though obviously it wasn't a particularly interesting bill in and of itself, because it was literally just saying this is the end of the emergency.
Yes, and, you know, as somebody that's gotten COVID twice this year, I don't understand how it's over, but here we go. We're back to normal.
Yep, it's just out there now, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, looking back at the 118th Congress, what is our big takeaway?
Well, honestly, so it was a bit of a mixed bag. There was a handful of substantive wins, but far too much time was spent on this ceremonial legislation and obviously the political drama and wrangling and infighting, really, particularly among the sort of Republican majority in the House. I mean, it's a reminder that Congress really needs to prioritize what truly matters to the American people if they're going to actually do the job that they're elected to do.
I do feel like this kind of behavior and everything that's going on is more of even a symptom of the society that we're living in now, and the internet and virality, and people are kind of not necessarily after doing what they're doing. There's always kind of some kind of weird contorty side approach of trying to have a viral moment, trying to get on the talk shows, thinking about the books that they'll write after they're not in Congress anymore, or all of these other things. And it is pretty crazy to see how, 3.3% of bills, like that is so crazy that, we're paying people tons of money to try to help us move our society forward. And, at least the blueberries aren't left behind.
It is. And it is worth noting that this doesn't happen in other countries. There's obviously sort of political problems, and there's conflict, and there's polarization among politics. But I can't think of any other sort of country. I mean, maybe people can suggest some, but I can't think of any other country where in 2 years they will actually only pass like 3% of the bills they're intending to pass in any other legislature in the world. It's pretty unique to the American system, and it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing because there's a lot of things that need to be done, and Congress needs to be doing it. They need to be passing those bills. Right.
And I feel like, part of the question is begged of, are they just proposing too many bills and there's no way that they could get through all of them because they are doing things for show? Or is it that there's too much infighting and the only things that they can agree upon is that we all like lobster? Like...
Yeah, it's true. It is the polarization. The American system is designed to force the different parties and different views to actually work together, which is obviously very laudable, and it's a great thing because it doesn't happen elsewhere. But when those politicians can't get together and they can't find common ground, then everything just grinds to a halt. And it's been the story for a long time now, hasn't it? I mean, it's been, a decade or more since Congress has actually been able to function properly. So I really don't know what the solution is. Because the only solution is to change the rules, is to change things. But to do that, they need to agree. So it's a catch-22. If they could agree enough to actually change the way things work, then they wouldn't need to change them.
Right, exactly. Well, as we kick off 2025, let's hope that this 119th Congress sets maybe some better resolutions and sticks to them.
Yep, agreed. So here's to a year of fewer theatrics and more meaningful action. Remember, Republicans control both chambers of Congress this time round, albeit with razor-thin margins, and the presidency. So there's no excuse for inaction, particularly over the next 2 years.
Yes, we'll see what this has in store for us. Well, thank you all so much for joining us on Beyond the Bill Number. Don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts on the 118th Congress, and again, Happy New Year, everyone.
Yep, Happy New Year. And remember, it's never too late for Congress, or in fact, any of us, to turn things around. So see you next time.